Working Man Investor, today's video, what to do about the United States debt problem. With Moody's being the last credit agency to downgrade the United States debt, it has really shined a spotlight on our growing debt problem. I'm going to do a deep dive here into some of the things that we can do about it. So the United States is among one of the most indebted countries in the world, and our problem is only getting worse. The federal government's debt is currently $36 trillion. And to fix this problem, we're either going to have to do one of three things. Either cut spending and raise taxes. We can do a combination of cutting spending and raising taxes. And the third thing that we can do is economic growth. And that's what Trump is hoping to do with his, whatever we're calling this now, the big, beautiful bill. I don't think it's going to work. If you look at it, it adds about $4 trillion onto our deficit by 2035. And the bond market, the way bond prices, treasury prices are going up, their interest rates are going up. It doesn't seem like the bond market cares for it much either. I'm going to doing this video here basically just based off of how we could get economic growth and what that could do for us managing the deficit and moving forward. So the faster the economy grows, the less pressure there is to raise taxes and cut spending. This is because when the economy is growing, you're getting more businesses opening, and we're putting more people to work. People are feeling more comfortable with their job as the economy grows, so they're spending more. As people are doing this, there's a lot less pressure on the government to cut spending and to raise taxes. I'll give you an example. Let's say that a country's GDP is $1 trillion, and its average tax rate is 20%. Total tax revenue then would be $200 billion, 20% by $1 trillion. So if they bring a country economy is $1 trillion a year, you're taxing it at 20%, you're bringing in $200 billion in taxes a year. Now let's say you grow the economy by 5%. So you've expanded the economy, you've gotten more jobs, more people working, got more spending going on in the economy, people are feeling pretty good. So the economy expands by 5%. This brings the new GDP up that next year to $1.05 trillion. Now with the tax rate unchanged, so it's still a 20% tax rate, this new tax revenue for this year will be $210 billion. So it'll increase the tax revenue by $10 billion. That's when you hear people on MSNBC and all these channels talking about the politicians' goal and their hopes are to grow the economy to help take care of the deficit. That's what they mean. That is the best way to do it. It's also the hardest way to do it. You want the economy to expand. As I've said, keep adding jobs. You want the consumer feeling good and spending because one person's spending is another person's income, and it's also a tax revenue. You're not cutting taxes. You're not cutting spending, cutting back on Medicare and Social Security, all the entitlements. It's the best way for the citizens and the government to increase revenues. That's what they mean when they say grow the economy. So a growing economy, as I've said, it brings in more tax revenue. This will reduce the debt burden without raising the taxes and cutting the social programs, which is important. This gives lawmakers some breathing room to address financial imbalances. Ideally, you'd still want them to do some cutting, but cutting more with a scalpel, not just taking a chainsaw to it. So another term you're hearing a lot of is what is debt to GDP ratio? You hear that a lot. America's GDP to debt ratio is X, Y, and Z. What exactly does that mean? Okay, so a debt to GDP ratio is a measure of how much debt the federal government holds compared to how much it produces, its size of its economy within a year. I'll give you an example. I'm going to try to make this easy, so I'll give an example just saying you individually and your own personal GDP. Let's say you borrow $10,000 to start a business, okay? So you're all in $10,000. Everything you borrow, you spend to make this easy. Once you start the business, your sales, your net profit is $50,000 for the product that you're producing. Your personal GDP would be 20%. Now you compare that to 100%, that's a good thing. You could add more debt onto this and expand your debt and expand your products. What I mean by that is you could take out another loan for say $10,000, $20,000 and build another store to sell your products and say that increases your profits from $50,000 to $150,000. That's good. You could take on debt, you're growing your personal economy. So now let's take that same example and just say, but you borrow 10,000 and you don't sell 50,000. To keep it simple, let's just say your personal debt to income ratio is 122%, which is roughly what the United States is. That means that you owe more than you produced in a year. That's bad. This ratio gives you an insight into the stability of a country's economy, and it also gives an idea of how a country might struggle to pay its debts back, leading to a host of undesirable consequences. You don't want it more than 100%. You actually want it less than 100%. We're currently at 122%. This could lead to a lot of bad outcomes, such as, for example, interest rates on costs to service to debt become a bigger part of our budget. So all cost to service debt it's the interest rates that we have to charge to sell our treasuries at auction. So the way we finance debt in this country is through the sale of U.S. treasuries. The way treasuries work, as I've explained in other videos, but it's important for this too, if there's a lot of people bidding on those treasuries and there's a lot of demand for it, the price of the treasury goes up. It gets more expensive to meet demand. And the yield, which is our interest rate, it goes lower. This is good for us for financing our debt in the future. As of right now, this is not what is happening. At this time, the opposite is happening. We're having fewer people bidding on our treasuries. This is causing the price of the bond, the treasury, to go down, making it cheaper to buy, and the yield, the interest rate, to go up, meaning we have to pay more to finance our debt. This is good for the investor, really bad for the United States. It's the same principle as a mortgage, okay? You take out a 30-year mortgage, you would much rather have a 2% interest rate for 30 years as opposed to a 7% mortgage rate, because you're going to pay less in interest. Your payment every month is going to be less. And the loan itself over the process of 30 years is going to be a lot cheaper. It's a lot less of a burden on you financially. Same thing with the way we're financing our debt through treasuries. This is why you hear a lot of talk about the bond market right now and this being a problem. It's why we need to get our deficit under control, and it's why ideally we want to do it by growing the economy. I question whether or not we can do that, but I'm not going to do a dive into that right now. That'll be for another video. I just want to really hammer home and get that point across to you, the viewer, that you want to get the debt in control. One way to do it is to cut spending and raise taxes. That is painful. That is pretty much a guaranteed recession. Growing the economy is the ideal way to do it, but because that alone will just increase tax revenue to finance the debt and hopefully pay the debt down. We'll see if that happens. So now this gives you an idea of how the investors in the world that are looking at our debt and the things that they're watching. We will see what happens as we're moving forward here. As of now, President Trump, as I've said, his spending bill is going to add more of a deficit with the hope of expanding the economy. We'll see. I have my doubts. However, if we are able to grow the economy, this is the way I would like to see it go. I'd much rather grow the economy and finance our debt that way than to have to go through a painful cutting of social programs and raising of taxes, because nobody likes either one of those. So that's kind of what I got for you today. I'll do another video here. I'm going to do a deeper dive on the bond market. I'm really watching the bond market now. I'm studying it every day. As I'm studying it, I'm going to try to get more videos out to you guys so you guys can keep an eye of what's going on, because understanding the bond market is just so important to me, to being able to manage my financial future and help me make financial decisions. And I want to be able to explain that to you so that you can take that information and make the decision that's best for you and your family. That's what I got for you today. Working Man Investor. Keep grinding, people.